everyone. So let's go ahead and cover essay writing, the basics. Okay. General guidelines, you're going to want to stay in the present tense. So you will be writing, the narrator says, Zitkala-Sa writes, not wrote. Okay. The only exception to this is if you include any historical facts, which are true historical events that occurred. So, for example, boarding schools did occur. Those are true historical events, right? However, whenever we're writing about any text or even film, you want to acknowledge it as if it's in the present tense. That's just MLA rules. So you're also going to want to stay in the third person. So it's a little bit more formal, right? So stay in the third person throughout the entire essay, as in she, he, they, them, people, society, etc. Right? You might even say, instead of I think this, you might say some might think, or one might, blah blah blah. Right? So no first person at all. I, me, my, mine, etc. are all counting as first person. No second person either. Us, we, our, you, your, you are, right, etc. We want to avoid those. If you really want to have first or second person, make it in your intro and your conclusion, but do not have that in the body of your essay. Especially do not have the word you, because you, who are you talking to? Me. I'm your reader, right? So if you're saying you, you're like, you, Professor Garavito, you. And I'm like, whoa, right? And sometimes it can get a little awkward depending on what you're saying. So um, avoid speaking to me directly in the essay. And then so to eliminate first person from your writing, you can say, for example, I think that the marbles given to Zitkala-Sa symbolize the cultural erasure of the indigenous community. This is your idea, my idea, right? But like, this is your idea. All you got to do is take out the I think that, and that's it. You should be good to go after that. Now, to eliminate second person from your writing, just substitute second person words for people, society, humanity, etc., humankind, even, right? So, pro tip, use a thesaurus to help generate the language you're looking for. I still use one today, right? Make sure to look up the definitions of the words you don't know, though. Don't just say, "Oh, fancy word, let me plug it in here," because again, it can get real awkward. Alrighty. So, some general guidelines of words not to use. Now, if this is in the text itself, as in the author said it, it's totally fine. But I want to make sure that you aren't using these words because there are better words that we can choose. So, the words are good, bad, positive, negative things, stuff, happy, sad, and any first or second person. So, I want to make sure that we are choosing words that are more appropriate to what we want to convey. So, for example, one of the first times I got in front of a classroom, I went to Panera and I spilled a giant cup of coffee on my shirt. I had just bought the shirt so I could be more professional, and I was super embarrassed, right? So, that was a bad experience. I was a little sad and it was negative. Right? I literally had 20 minutes to be in front of a classroom and I had no other alternatives for clothing. However, um, my grandfather passed this year. That was also a bad experience. That was also negative. That was also sad. Are the two comparable? Absolutely not. Right? With the coffee incident, a more appropriate word would be embarrassed, disappointed, etc. Versus with the funeral thing, that would be maybe devastation. You know, and whatnot. So you want to find a word that is going to be more appropriate, because if you say, oh, she felt bad, well, what does that even mean? How? Why? Explain, right? So you want to avoid me having to ask those questions. And also, I think you guys can do better. So use a thesaurus. Thesaurus.com is honestly my favorite thing. Whenever I write an essay, or if I have to apply for somewhere and I'm like writing my cover letter, I always have a dictionary and thesaurus. So I put dictionary.com, thesaurus.com in the tabs when I'm working. Because if I can't think of a word, I just really quickly, and maybe I don't like the words, but at least it sparks an idea in me. So avoid asking questions in your essay. Instead of posing questions, write strong claims. Your essay should be answering questions, not asking them, especially in your analysis. So, for example, people might think, how can colonizers do this to natives, right? instead of posing the question, just answer it, right? Because you should probably be answering that question anyway in your essay. So instead, we can say Zitkala-Sa uses her autobiography to demonstrate the atrocities the indigenous community faced due to colonization, which produced the cultural erasure of the Sioux. We also want to avoid using metaphors and casual phrases or euphemisms in the essay, right? So, for example, to not cry over spilled milk. The implication is don't worry about things that have already happened and you can't change, right? That's kind of what that expression means, but it's informal. So any metaphors, phrases, euphemisms, those are all informal, and the genre of the essay is formal. So we want to avoid it. Also, it just doesn't appropriately convey what we want. So, for example, Zitkala-Sa's reflections show us to not cry over spilled milk and keep looking ahead, right? So maybe what do we want to say instead? Write the implication in your own words and directly apply it to the character you're analyzing. So instead of this, we should probably write something like Zitkala-Sa's reflections demonstrate her resilience and how she is able to move forward with what she remembers to try and preserve of her Sioux culture. It's kind of explaining what I meant here by don't cry over spilled milk, as in, like, it's okay, just move forward, right? Even though it wasn't okay. Genocide's never okay. But you get the idea that I'm trying to convey here. Alrighty, and I am using this color code just so you know, so you can kind of understand what I'm highlighting here. So when we're quoting from the text, we want to provide context. Context is basically necessary information for the reader to understand what's going on before you set up the quote, which is basically where in the text is this happening, right? So always introduce the quote with a signal phrase. The signal phrase is going to be, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to change this, but this should say the narrator explains, or her mother says, comma, right? So the signal phrase basically just introduces the quotation. So the narrator says, Zitkala-Sa writes, her mother exclaims. We want to add quotation marks around your direct quote, and we want to add an in-text citation at the end of your quote. So here we have Lexi narrates, and then my little daughter, he is a sham, a sickly sham. The Bronze Dakota is the only real man, right? That's the quotation. Then we have the citation here at the end. Now there's another error here. Can you spot it in this quote? Here, okay, I left that in there on purpose. Please make sure that you are paying attention. We want the quotation marks to be facing the correct way. Okay, sorry if you heard dogs. I've got animals. All right, so then paraphrasing the text, we want to provide context as well, but we want to begin the paraphrase by briefly summarizing the scene that we want to analyze. This will also include an in-text citation. It just will not include a signal phrase because we're not directly quoting anything. So instead, we can say the narrator's mother describes the pale face as fraudulent, implying that the only real man is the Bronze Dakota. We still have our citation there. Okay, so those are just some best practices for essay writing. If you have any questions at all whatsoever, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and ask. Let me know if you want any clarification on anything. Thank you.